What if I told you there's a book so powerful, so influential, that it sparked debates, divided scholars, and changed the way billions understand God? This book isn't fiction, it's the Septuagint. Some call it a masterpiece, others call it dangerous. The Septuagint, an ancient Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible, is one of the most enigmatic and controversial texts in history. Written over 2,000 years ago, it bridges the gap between two worlds, the Hebrew tradition and the Hellenistic Greek culture. Yet, this ancient translation has been at the center of countless debates, from its origins to its theological implications. This book is considered dangerous not in the sense of violence, but in its ability to challenge beliefs, ignite controversies, and alter history. The story of the Septuagint begins in ancient Egypt during the reign of Ptolemy II Philadelphus in the 3rd century BCE. Legend has it that 72 Jewish scholars were commissioned to translate the Torah, the first 5 books of the Hebrew Bible, into Greek for the Jewish diaspora in Alexandria. These Jews, having lived in a Hellenistic society for generations, were more fluent in Greek than Hebrew, and the translation was meant to preserve their religious heritage. But this was more than a linguistic exercise. By translating the sacred Hebrew texts into Greek, the Septuagint made Jewish theology accessible to the wider Mediterranean world. For the first time, the profound ideas of monotheism and covenant reached beyond the Jewish community, planting seeds that would grow into major theological and philosophical movements. The Septuagint wasn't just a translation, it was a transformation. The Greek language carried nuances that the Hebrew did not, and in some cases, the translators made interpretive choices that significantly altered the meaning of key passages. Take, for instance, the word Alma in Hebrew, which means young woman. In the Septuagint, it was translated into the Greek word parthenos, meaning virgin. This subtle shift had enormous implications, especially for early Christians, who saw this as a prophecy of the virgin birth of Jesus Christ. The Septuagint became the primary scripture for early Christians, shaping their theology and Christological interpretations. Yet, these theological shifts caused a rift between Christians and Jews, who argued that the Greek translation deviated from the original Hebrew meaning. The Septuagint also had political consequences. During the Hellenistic period, rulers sought to use religion as a tool of cultural integration. The Greek translation of Jewish scripture was seen as a way to align Jewish thought with Greek philosophy, making it more palatable to the ruling elite. But this alignment wasn't always harmonious. The Septuagint became a double-edged sword, used by both oppressors and the oppressed. Greek-speaking Jews could defend their faith in a language understood by their neighbors, but at the same time, their sacred texts were exposed to reinterpretation and manipulation by foreign powers. The Septuagint was even weaponized by empires like Rome, where it was used to justify policies that subjugated Jewish communities. Its very existence became a battleground for cultural and religious identity. The Septuagint has been a cornerstone in shaping the way the Bible has been read, understood, and interpreted throughout history. Its influence goes beyond linguistic translation. It has deeply impacted theological development, liturgical practices, and even the canon of Scripture itself. One of the most striking examples of its impact is how it was used in the New Testament. The authors of the Gospels, Paul's epistles, and other New Testament writings frequently quoted from the Septuagint rather than the Hebrew Scriptures. Psalm 22:16. The Hebrew text is often rendered as "like a lion, they are at my hands and feet," while the Septuagint translates it as "they have pierced my hands and feet." This version significantly influenced Christian interpretations of the crucifixion, being seen as a prophecy of Jesus' suffering. The Septuagint also provided a framework for theological concepts that were more accessible to the Greek-speaking world. Terms like logos, word, and soteria, salvation, used extensively in Christian theology, gained traction because they resonated with Greek philosophical thought. Moreover, the Septuagint played a critical role in shaping early Christian liturgy and worship. Since Greek was the lingua franca of the Roman Empire, the Septuagint allowed the new faith to spread rapidly among non-Jewish populations. This accessibility, however, created a rift between Jewish and Christian communities. Jewish scholars accused early Christians of hijacking the Septuagint to validate their beliefs. This led to the eventual abandonment of the Septuagint by Jewish communities in favor of texts like the Masoretic text. Conversely, the Christian Church embraced the Septuagint as divinely inspired, incorporating it into their canon. This divergence further solidified the theological split between Judaism and Christianity. It also introduced textual differences that have puzzled scholars for centuries. For instance, the book of Jeremiah in the Septuagint is significantly shorter than the Hebrew version. Scholars debate whether the Septuagint reflects an earlier Hebrew version, or if the translators deliberately abridged it. The book of Daniel in the Septuagint includes additional sections, such as the prayer of Azariah and Susanna, which are absent in the Hebrew text. These additions became canonical in some Christian traditions, but were excluded by Judaism. The Septuagint is not without its critics. Accusations of mistranslation have persisted for centuries, with some Jewish scholars rejecting it as an unfaithful rendering of the Hebrew Bible. By the 2nd century, Jewish communities largely abandoned the Septuagint in favor of other translations like the Masoretic text. This rejection wasn't merely theological, it was also a response to the Septuagint's adoption by Christians, who used it to validate their interpretations of Jewish prophecy. Even today, the Septuagint's canonical status is hotly debated. While it's considered scripture by many Orthodox Christians, it's viewed with skepticism by others who question its accuracy and intent. Even in modern times, the Septuagint remains a critical text for understanding the Bible's historical and theological dimensions. Its relevance extends to biblical scholarship, religious practice, and interfaith dialogue. The Septuagint provides invaluable insights into the textual history of the Bible. By comparing the Septuagint with the Masoretic text, the authoritative Hebrew Bible, scholars can identify changes, omissions, or additions that occurred over centuries. This helps reconstruct the evolution of the biblical text and offers clues about how different communities interpreted Scripture. Some fragments of the Dead Sea Scrolls align more closely with the Septuagint than the Masoretic text. This suggests that the Septuagint may preserve an earlier version of the Hebrew Scriptures, challenging long-held assumptions about the text's transmission. The Septuagint has shaped many modern Bible translations. The King James Version and subsequent English translations often reflect readings from the Septuagint, especially in the Old Testament passages quoted in the New Testament. Translations like the New Revised Standard Version and Orthodox Study Bible explicitly incorporate insights from the Septuagint to provide a fuller understanding of the text. In contemporary theology, the Septuagint continues to influence discussions about doctrine and interpretation. For example, Eastern Orthodox Christianity regards the Septuagint as its Old Testament text, seeing it as more authoritative than the Hebrew Masoretic text. This perspective shapes Orthodox liturgy, doctrine, and biblical interpretation. The Septuagint serves as a bridge between Jewish and Christian scholarship, fostering dialogue about shared scriptures and divergent traditions. It offers a common ground to explore how the Bible has been understood across cultures and centuries. The Septuagint is not without its modern detractors. Some argue that it introduces theological biases that skew the original intent of the Hebrew Scriptures. For instance, critics point to the translation of Alma as Parthenos as an example of a mistranslation that significantly influenced Christian doctrine. Others question whether the Septuagint's additional texts, like 1st Esdras and Baruch, should be considered scripture, as they are not found in the Hebrew canon. The Septuagint is more than a historical artifact. It's a living document that continues to spark debate. Was it a faithful translation of the Hebrew Bible, or a tool for Hellenistic assimilation? Did it preserve Jewish tradition, or distort it? And what does its legacy tell us about the power of interpretation in shaping religious thought? These questions remain unanswered, making the Septuagint a subject of endless fascination for scholars, theologians, and believers alike. What do you think about the Septuagint? Is it a dangerous distortion or a bridge between cultures? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon